You've reached Monster 911, and I'm Lance Hightower. I've been taking cryptid emergency calls for over 5 years. If you have a cryptid emergency, please call our toll-free number, 866-306-8085. I can help you. What's your emergency? Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of your favorite cryptid therapy podcast show, Monster 911. Before we begin, if you want to show your support for the podcast show, then you can head right over to the online store at www.monster911.com and grab a t-shirt. They have our signature logo on the chest. The fabric is heavy cotton and it feels great. In addition, the t-shirt is more than a t-shirt. It's actually a survival tool. That's right, folks. It can serve as a tourniquet, stop a wound from bleeding, filter water, use as a carrying bag, start a fire, fan a fire, apply alcohol, camouflage your hat, and so much more. That's right, it's more than a t-shirt. It's a Monster 911 t-shirt. And we plan on adding some more merch, so keep your eyes peeled, guys, for more stuff coming. I hope you've been enjoying the recent special seasons of the podcast. I'm working on some similar shows which will be released in the near future. If you've had any sighting that you can't explain, then don't hesitate to get in touch with me. You can call our toll-free number at 1-866-306-8085, or if you'd prefer, you can fill in the details of your sighting into a contact portion of our website. You go to the top of the menu bar and click Contact, and it'll just direct you to fill in a form right there. Now, in this episode, we feature an interview with my brother Layne, discussing what occurred this past deer season while at camp on my brother Laird's newly purchased remote deer hunting property in Oklahoma. I conducted this interview not long after the event, so the details were still fresh in Layne's mind. I think you'll find this interesting account, since we all know that there is more than deer, coyotes, and the like in the woods that go bump in the night. This is one of those accounts in which, had someone at camp had an audio recorder going or a thermal recorder operating, this would have been quite chilling to hear. We had all gone down to Laird's new property. I'm just kind of letting the guests know kind of where we're at. We were down in Pushmataha County. Brother Laird had bought some property, and to our knowledge, not a lot of people have been camping on this particular property, and it borders up against some of the wildlife management hunting area, and we obviously saw some wildlife. And I was down there, I think, a couple nights, and I stayed with Laird, and you had your tent up. And then Joe had his tent up, and we were all within a radius of about, 15, 20 yards, I'd say. Everybody was within that kind of perimeter. So I left. Nothing really strange happened. We all hunted. Brother Bill came down, and he was there, and we had some deer, some people shot at, but of course missed, but had a good time. And then I left back home, but you were still there with Laird and Joe. If you could pick up from there kind of where you guys were at and what transpired, just kind of go from there, because you contacted me and explained what happened.
Right. Well,
and this, by the way, was just, last week or the week before? Today's December 1st of 2021, so this was
this is over a week ago. Because I had to, let's see, that was Sunday night, because I had to go to work the following Monday. So, yeah, that would have been a Sunday evening, I believe. Okay. Either way, it was kind of a freaky ordeal. Yeah, everybody had left. Of course, it was just I was staying in the tent by myself. Joe, Laird's friend, was staying in his own tent adjacent to Laird's tent, probably 20 yards. Everybody was kind of spaced out sporadically. Wasn't too far away, but close enough if one needed help or assistance with something throughout the night. But yeah, later it was that evening we had ate some supper. Laird had invited us to his tent. Of course, it's a large tent. It's primarily kind of like two tents combined. It's just one tent, but anyway, very spacious, very roomy. So Joe and I was invited into Laird's tent. Laird was cooking some pasta dinner. And of course, some of these, camping roundhouse meals that people buy, when you can't freeze dry food, you add the hot water, you stir, you wait for a little bit, and it's ready to go. Instant food for the most part. This is actually pretty good. But, nevertheless, we had, ate our late night supper, and after that, we had, relaxed. I believe I had a beer, and we were just sitting there talking and relaxing. We were just talking about odds and ends in life, and probably within the first maybe 20 minutes to 30 minutes, it had been just a little while, but I would say probably in the first half hour, everything was fine. We're talking, relaxing, letting our food settle. And, of course, we had the heat going on in the tent, and we had it vented where it wasn't too hot, not too cold, but just comfortable enough where everybody's just relaxing, discussing, the hunting, where everybody had went throughout the day and what kind of deer sign they saw or hog sign, etc. And I want to say this was probably around... this would have been earlier that evening, so this would have been happening later on, because I'm just trying to remember the time that we heard these steps. So basically, it was more or less of a heavy thumping type step, and I want to say it was probably around 10 to 10:30.
Okay.
So let's just say that we had already ate, we're relaxing, and we heard some heavy thumps. Now, Joe and I heard it at the same time because we were actually sitting in our fold-out chairs close to the flap of the tent where you zip it.
So the flap is closed. You guys are inside, closed. And this tent, that's where I stayed with Laird while I was there. It's almost like a all-season type of tent, but it's more like a summer tent. It's very thin nylon. It zips on one side, and it almost has like a partition in it, and it's just an oversized seasonal summer or spring tent. Nothing fancy about it, but it's just really big, and it's just nylon, and it has a big door you zip, and that's about it. But go ahead.
Yeah, that's exactly. I mean, you kind of hit the nail on the head with that type of tent. Just really an early, a spring type, summertime to early fall, but it'll work in the wintertime provided you put a tarp in there to give it some extra insulation to hold the heat, incubate the heat. I mean,
yes.
Any tent for the most part will work. We both know that. We just got to, tarp it from the exterior part. Then you had your heat inside, you'll be fine. Anyway, so getting back to the story, we're sitting there, and here I'm drinking a beer, and we're sitting here talking. Next thing you know, we hear these thumps, meaning that like something had just kind of ran by the tent or jogged by the tent. I don't know how to describe it. And it didn't sound like hooves; it sounded like feet.
So probably to help people understand how you can hear something, where we had the tent set up, our tents, the ground was kind of hard. It was kind of a compact, dried dirt grass area. So if it rained really hard, it'd be kind of muddy, but once it's dried out,
it has a surface. It's hard. I mean, you can tap your foot on it. So that's kind of where between, as soon as you exit Laird's tent, that's kind of that hard, compact grass soil combo, and that's what it was, hard area surface. So you could hear something with a heavy walking gait or running gait hit, boom, 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 So I just wanted to explain that, just because I was there staying with Laird, and I was there for a few days, so I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. Like I said, nevertheless, we heard some heavy footsteps that ran by the tent, and they were heavy enough to break conversation, as all three of us. Now, we weren't, Joe and I were kind of sitting like, 2 foot from each other.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, Laird was in the other half of the tent, but he was sitting on his stool or chair looking at us. So it was just the way how everything was positioned in the tent, to let the audience know. But we noticed, or at least Joe and I, we heard this thump, 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 thump as it was running by, whatever it was. However, what I do know is that it did not sound like hooves, meaning like deer or pig. And number one, deer or hog wouldn't have never done that to begin with, because we all know that animals like that are skittish to begin with around human contact, or the smells of all the smells that a camp draws. So no animal like that is going to run through the camp. But what was interesting is Joe and I, after the thumping, kind of like trotting of this, whatever it was, ran through the camp, Joe and I looked at each other immediately, and then Joe looked at me and said, what the hell was that? Did you hear that, Layne? And I said, absolutely. He said, what? That sounded like somebody ran by the tent. I said, it sure did. And I said, that wasn't a deer, nor was it a coyote or a hog. Once again, you're not going to have these animals come through camp, especially that close to humans. And I knew that instantly, and I had an idea or a sneaky suspicion what it could be, just because of my encounter years and years ago. So we kind of like looked at each other, puzzled, and then we just kind of slowly kind of thought, okay, well, all right, that was weird. So we went back to conversation, and then it wasn't 10 minutes later, couldn't have been more than 15 at the most, we heard this thing run by the tent again. So it was almost like it was one something running by the tent and then ran by, or two somethings, one ran by and then another one proceeded behind it to go in the same direction. So it was either one or the other, because we heard thump, 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 thump again, and then Joe goes, there it goes again. And then I said, I've had it. That's enough. Because as I've told you before, when I'm camping, I don't know. If I hear something that's out of the ordinary and I know that nobody else is outside, meaning that we already knew that there was only 3 of us there. There wasn't anybody else there camping with us.
No,
knew that you and
private property, very remote.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's just you guys and wildlife. That's it.
Exactly. So, I already, that was discounted to begin with, number one. There wasn't anybody else there. It was just us 3. So Joe goes, there it goes again. He goes, what the hell? I said, okay, I've had enough. I'm going out. I've got to see. He goes, yeah. So I went ahead and, it went out in front of him and physically, zipped the fly of the tent to the flat. And then I went out to the left, and then he went out to the right with our weapons and lights. And basically our semi-automatic handguns with weapon lights on them attached. And so to look around to see what was going on. Because we knew that something either ran back again, or something else preceded the first. something that ran by. So it was either one or two. Obviously hard to tell, but I do know that trying to connect the dots with everything, that's what I came up with. And I told Joe to look for eye shine. I said, animals will always have eye shine, doesn't matter what it is, a raccoon, a possum, a skunk, deer, anything. If anything that's looking back at you is going to have a reflection with the light refracting off the eyes.
Right.
So that's what you're instantly looking for at night is a reflection of eyes, whether it's on the ground or, 10 feet up in the air. Mm-hmm. So that's what you're looking for. I was scanning the ground. Then I started scanning up higher than that, like 8 to 10 foot range, scanning up in the trees that way. Whether or not it was a creature, meaning a Bigfoot type creature or a Dogman type creature, it could have been. I don't discount that. I don't discount anything anymore just because of my encounter so many years ago. Because I knew after I had the first encounter, which is the only encounter so far, if those things are real, then what else is out? What else is out there that is real? Well, it opens the door to a lot of possibilities of other creatures. Besides Bigfoot itself. Now, could it have been a Bigfoot? Sure. Could it have been a Dogman? Absolutely. So yeah, I'm scanning everything. I'm not seeing anything yet. But Joe's scanning to the right. I went to the left. We kind of collaborated after we kind of scanned the area. We did a 360 scan with the weapon lights. Then we kind of we came back, we regrouped and kind of collaborated what happened, and that we just basically said, okay, we don't see anything, and we listened for a little bit with the lights turned off. We didn't hear a twig snap or anything like that, but we said, listen, we're tired. It is late. We got bellies full of food. We're getting sleepy. We've had a long day of hunting. We're going to go back to our tents and lay on our cots and go to bed. If something else happens, within the next 30 minutes to half hour, we're going to group back together with weapons and lights and to see and basically say, hey, trying to find out exactly where this is coming from so we can put a stop to it. Because, I personally don't want anything around my tent. Now, it's one thing to have a little critter around your tent, but it's another thing to have heavy, heavy steps. And when I say heavy steps, this sounded like it was at least the way it ran by to me. This was more than a guy that weighs 250 pounds. I can tell you that. So, you get a good-sized man who's, say, 6'5" or 6'6" and 250 to 270, like some NFL dude or something. Not saying that's a big man, is it? Yes, sure. But, man, I tell you what, there were some heavy steps that came by that tent. It didn't sound like a white-tailed deer either. So I just kind of let it go to bed like that. I didn't want to freak Joe out anymore because he was already freaked out anyway. So, but anyway, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that when you told me what had happened, I just started thinking, the gentleman that had this property prior to Brother Laird buying it, he lived in a house not too far away, literally. So he had no need to tent camp on the property. So you and I had, as well as with Brother Bill, spoken about this, and we think that no one had really tented on this particular property for a long time, who knows how long. And so we were thinking one of the first to do so. And in this area, the landscape this happens to be in a county and near other counties that have a high number of cryptid sightings. Not too far away, as we all know, I would say as a crow flies, maybe 15 miles or less, we had the gentleman that we interviewed, JC, saw the 12-foot Bigfoot out on his property. This area is loaded with pine trees, hardwoods. It's a rocky terrain. There's mountains. There's various elevations with dry creek beds as well as ponds. here and there. My brother Laird happens to have a pretty good size watering hole pond on his property, so a lot of wildlife will come into that place. That's the only watering hole for a ways. There's a huge wildlife management hunting area to the south that there is nobody living over there. That's just, and you can only bow hunt for deer. So pretty wild, very remote, very rugged, treacherous type of terrain that it's just very difficult to navigate in. So anything could be back there, well protected, well hidden, plenty of wildlife, and of course on Brother Laird's property, lots of water.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and everybody kind of knows what things sound like. I mean, you could take someone that has been out just very few times, and you can tell when something is walking on, on four legs like a deer versus someone running by on two legs.
Well, if one's experienced enough, to say, hey, I've been, and all of us basically have, grown up doing the hunting, fishing, hiking, camping, etc. So, if you spend time long enough out in the woods, you're going to get pretty good at it. And you're going to get pretty good at listening to the surrounding sounds, identifying different creatures of habit, such as we are creatures of habit ourselves.
Right.
So you're going to get good, pretty good skills identifying tracks. And to identify where they're from, or what species of game placed them on the ground. Good with birds, good with trees, good with everything. So after a while, you kind of know what is going to be around you, whether day or night. But I do know this. I don't ever claim to be an expert in this stuff. It's just, it's just years of experience. But I will say that I do know deer's not going to run through your camp. Hogs are not going to run through your camp.
Or elk.
Or coyotes or anything.
Bear.
All these creatures are going to be on the exterior bubble of your camp, so to speak. There's a area where they won't go into this bubble of human activity. It's just basically a no-go zone. So these animals are going to stay in the exterior parts in the forest, because you've got all these. First of all, there's a lot of these creatures that'll, even if they catch the whiff of human scent,
right,
all the camp, they're not even going to they don't even have to see you to say, oh, okay, there's human beings. I'm not going to, you know what I'm saying? It's just a matter of smell.
Right.
So, so that was really strange. Like I said, I didn't want to get Joe stirred up for the rest of the night so he couldn't sleep all night. I mean, that's no fun. But right. I can tell you this, I didn't want to get him going, but I just knew in the back of my mind, something doesn't run by your tent and then come by your tent again. Or either something runs by your tent with heavy steps and then something else proceeds behind the first. So, and if that's the case, then so be it. But there's only two things that I know what would do that. A human being, number one, and number two, a cryptid creature, such as a Bigfoot or a Dogman, would do that. They've been known to do that. There has been eyewitness of people, whether it's day or night, that have actually seen them do that. Of course, I've seen a Bigfoot, but not in that particular situation. So, but nothing surprises me, at the least, with these type unknown creatures. Number one, they're super intelligent, very agile, very smart. Very inquisitive. They can connect the dots like we can pretty quick.
Right.
So they can see, by the way, they can see better than us at night. Guarantee you. Because if they're born and raised out in an environment like that, like all the other animals, and a lot of people say, wait a minute, animals do travel at night. That's correct, they do, for the most part. A lot of animals hunt at night. A lot of animals cannot really see. Some of them can see primarily in the dark because obviously, through scientific study that they have different rods and cones than we do in our eyes. And I'm sure at one time human beings could see a lot better at night. Today, absolutely not. We have to have some type of light source like most of us have to have, or all of us have to have for that matter, unless you got night vision. Yeah, these things can see a lot better than we can at night. So, once again, now here's the freaky part about this. So we all go back to our tents. And so everything kind of settles down. And then I started hearing some owl, meaning that sounds of an owl, like a great horned owl. But it sounded like it, but not really. And it's been known that these creatures, meaning when I say these creatures, I'm talking about Bigfoot-type creatures, have been known to mimic other animals. They're very good at that. And why wouldn't they?
Sure.
They're in the environment that they're raised in.
Absolutely.
So it kind of sounded like an owl west of the tent in the dark woods later on that evening, meaning that we were already in the tents. But the first one sounded like an owl, but kind of not. And then the second time it did it, it didn't. It just kind of sounded. It's hard to mimic, and it's just. It sounded like a whoa, and then it was like whoa. It was really weird and creepy, and so I was like, "What the hell is that?" Because I'm, once again, by that time, I'm kind of laying down in my tent. I'm looking at my phone, kind of winding down like everybody would wind down. I just didn't go immediately, fall on the cot and go to bed. No.
Right.
I had to wind down a little bit. So I was looking at, on my phone and, texting my wife and that. And then when I heard that, and mind you, when this happened, there was no wind. It was super quiet. So sound can travel a long way. We all know that, especially in that particular area. So once again, I'm laying down, texting, and just reading text messages and everything. And then I hear the first hoot owl, and then the second one. It was weird. It was like mixed between an owl, a coyote, some other bird, and a human being. It was just didn't even make sense whatsoever. And as soon as that happened, of course, my phone is just, vibrating all over the place. And I know it's Joe, and Joe was basically texting me. I mean, he was texting me so fast I couldn't even respond to the first text. So he was just basically, saying the same thing. I was like, what the hell is that?
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know. I'm not for sure, but it was creepy. And, yeah. And so, it was just really, really eerie, but you could hear sounds like something was in the trees kind of walking around, but then it would stop. And so that lasted probably about maybe 10, 15 minutes, and then that was about it. And then it stopped for the rest of the night. Now, I just stayed up. I told, of course, my phone's going exploding back and forth, blowing up with texting. Joe's just freaking out because he can hear this as well. So I told him, I said, listen, whatever it is, the way I look at it, if it wants to continue to live, it better turn around and go back where it came from, because I'm not putting up with it. Nor should anybody put up with it, for that matter. And it's not that the fact that I'm saying, hey, I'm going to go look for something and just shoot it to shoot it. No. But once again, I'm not putting up with anything that sounds eerie and creepy around my camp, and I don't know what it is, but yet I'm letting it walk around my camp? I don't think so. So I told him basically, if it continues and it starts creeping up to the tent, I'm coming out with my shotgun and a light. And then he said he would, meet me with, whatever he's got for the most part. And it doesn't matter. It's just the fact that I'm just trying to keep something away off of me.
Oh, I know.
Because, we all know, granted, there is black bear down there, and chances are nothing would ever happen with those. But once again, the possibilities increase when you're out in the middle of nowhere anyway.
Absolutely.
So it's just good safety. It's good food for thought for anybody regardless of who you are, that wants to go camping in a rural environment. Have fun, enjoy yourself, knock yourself out, but you need to have some type of a firearm with you. That's just good food for thought for anybody.
Absolutely, 100% agree on that. And I thought it was very strange and surreal, since this is kind of what we do. We interview people, we go in the field, we investigate, and then here we have this happen to us, totally unplanned, on a brother's property. But again, this area is prime habitat for these creatures, and you could easily chalk this up, someone not connecting the dots. You could easily say, oh, that was just a raccoon, or that was just a bear, But when you start understanding animals' habits and tendencies and characteristics, you realize, well, wait a minute, what's the likelihood of a couple guys doing this through camp? It's very unlikely, because of where we're at, how remote it is, and they'd have to have flashlights, and you'd probably hear voices. So that kind of rules that out. And when you start ruling out all what it's not, you start and realize that there's these cryptids, these creatures that are present, that exist and are real. Then you start coming to the conclusion, well, I know it's not this and this, so it must be one of these creatures, And so that's kind of, I just thought that was so surreal and bizarre that it happened. I wish I'd been there, but it happened to you guys. And then this, after that, this sound, was after that. And you were telling me you kind of hung on to your firearm a little tighter that night, because it was just a bizarre. It was just a bizarre sound that we've never heard, or that you've never heard.
Yeah. After that night, I basically, just shortly after that creepy type of vocalization happened, I just basically told Joe, listen, if it keeps up, then we'll group up, we'll collaborate what we need to do, kind of scout the area, not going in the trees per se, but just in the interior of the camp for the most part, do a 360 scan. But other than that, I told him that I would kind of keep my eyes and ears open for a little while. And then that's what I did, probably for about another 20, 30 more minutes. Didn't hear anything after that. And then, hey, I'm tired. There's no sense of staying up. Of course, I'm not going to, stay up around the clock for that. But one thing that I kind of trained myself is the fact that there's leaves all over the place, and especially around, on the ground at this time of year, and especially down there. So, anywhere that I set my tent up, of course, I set that tent up purposely to get it out of the north wind. And also, purposely to get out of the north wind, and then it gave the availability of cover, and then I could park the car adjacent to the side of it, and it would help it just a little bit more. But also, too, there's dead leaves, like I was saying, to begin with. So you can hear anything walking up to a tent. If you're in tune with everything, you're relaxed like most people do. And for the most part, when people go camping, it really takes, honestly, about a couple days for a person to really calm down, to really start listening to all the sounds, because we live in, majority of us live in town. We hear all sorts of car and truck noises, people talking, vehicular traffic, etc., whatever the case may be. So when we go to basically a rural area that has none of those noises, it takes a little while. I've always told, at least for me, it's always taken me for about a couple days, kind of like to wind down, and then I don't know, on 2 full days, but at least a day and a half to say, hey, my mind's starting to slow down to the rural environment. That's basically, it goes from 100 miles an hour to basically 0.
Mm-hmm.
So now you're in tune. Your mind starts getting in tune with all the exterior noises, meaning that bug noises, bird noises, and whatever else is out there that's making some creepy noises. But I figured, I'm going to stay up a little while. If I hear anything, well, it's going to have weight to it, so it's going to make noise. It cannot literally sneak. You cannot sneak up on my tent without making some type of noise. You can't float over the leaves. So there was kind of like some brush in the back a little bit of the tent, so you're going to make noise. So if it made noise, thumping, running by the tent, then I'm pretty much, I'm pretty sure that I could hear it walking up behind the tent or to the tent from all angles, regardless of where it comes from. So stayed up, didn't hear any sign or sound. However, before we got to the point where we're too sleepy to text, Joe texted me his one last text and said that he was hearing some noises around his tent area.
Oh, that's right.
So I don't know.
That's right. I forgot about that.
So now he didn't get up and go out, and nor did I get up and go out and look. But I just I was on standby for another text or him just saying hell with it and, jumping out of his tent and going looking and then yelling over me because, we weren't that far away. We could hear each other. If I said, hey, Joe, he's going to hear me. We were just trying to be silent with the phone going on, texting, caulking instead of just, kind of yelling.
Right.
So that's the only reason why we're texting is to do a silent, hey, we're collaborating back and forth that we hear whatever it is. So Joe had heard some noise around his tent and then after that, I didn't hear anything else, so I assumed or figured he's okay. So if it wasn't okay, then I would have heard something. I would have heard him get out of his tent, yell, gunshot, something.
Right, exactly.
So, that just connected the dots real quick on that. So anyway, yeah, that's I almost forgot about that. But yeah, that's he started hearing noises around his tent. So, yeah.
And then after that, you really didn't encounter anything per se. Everything just kind of quieted down to your knowledge. And
yeah, everything would it basically was just on a wind down. Nothing creeped around. Like I said, and then I did wake up probably, 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning. Not that I heard something. I just had to go to the restroom. So, took care of that business. And then, I did, just kind of like, you kind of loopy, who wasn't loopy, kind of, so to speak, at that time of morning. So I thought, well, so I'm kind of listening. And, the wind's not even blowing. There's a whisper wind out there, but, obviously nothing where it's flapping the tent. But I just kind of listened and didn't hear anything. So I thought, okay, well, I'm going back to bed. And I did. My goodness, I'm not going to stay up all night and just be a zombie the next morning for no reason. So went back to bed, and it was really calm the rest of that night. The next morning, I did kind of look for tracks or some type of imprint in the soil around it. But that terrain over there, it doesn't really give full definition. You know what I'm talking about? With tracks.
I know. So, well, I'll say this. Normally when we're in deer camp, we do have lights around the camp like we did at Three Rivers that kind of, when someone gets out, the whole area is kind of lit. It's not super bright, but you can walk around. Whereas this time, there was no lights outside. It was just pitch black.
Exactly.
So I wonder, and in the past, when we've had camp things happen, and we have them come into our camp, we didn't have any lights on. Going back, and thinking retrospectively about when we had things happen around the camp, it was just pitch black. As soon as we started putting up these lights around the camp, things kind of stopped.
Right. Well, and that's another thing that I had brought up. Even I spoke to Brother Bill, is the fact that, well as that is, not only to him, but to Joe as well. We had been kind of like light fanatics, if you want to call it that, to get some type of a night light around camp, and also aids. It helps everybody out when you go out to use a restroom or et cetera. You don't always have to put the headlamp on or whatever. I still do anyway, because I just, the more available light around you, the better. It was kind of like not a bunch of lights. So the only existing lights there was whatever was in whomever's tent.
Right.
I did bring another lantern down that was one I haven't used. I actually have had for years. I forgot. I never did open it out of the box. It was practically brand new, a Coleman lantern. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to bring that, and just to hang on a limb, for the most part, or keep it on the exterior part of the tent and put it on low to get some of that night light, at least around my area.
Right.
To keep the critters from not coming around, but also, hey, I could see something that would silhouette walking between the Coleman lantern and the tent.
Right, exactly.
That's another thing that helps me out, because if I've got a lantern on the exterior part, and if you walk between it, you're gonna cast a shadow.
That's right.
And so that's why I think of things like that. I know a lot of people are, but I do. It's just because of my encounter years and years ago. Because I'm thinking, if kind of like a preemptive strike a little bit. What's going, where to look for. I always do that everywhere I go. What route? What angle could it come by my tent? Which way, or what's the best? Now, granted, it could come in the open of the tent, but I just think of little things like that. As a matter of fact, I thought about putting monofilament line. That's another thing I've done. You just take monofilament line, which is clear, and then you can hook pop cans up to it, or beer cans, or any type of cans.
Yeah, I think we've done something like that in the past.
Yeah,
and I think on previous shows, for our guest here, that it's something that they can do too. That it's pretty inexpensive, and you can do. It's easy, it's inexpensive, and it just takes not that long to assemble, and people can do that around their camp. If they want to have a kind of a hillbilly way, so to speak, or a moonshiner way to do things, it still can give some level of noise.
Well, yeah, it alert you to say, hey, something just going to hit the tripwire a little bit. Something's going on.
Right.
I didn't do it this time. I thought about doing it, but I thought, no, if I just put a light out, at least, I can do some silhouette. But here's the funny thing about it. I brought the light, but I never did put it up because I got too busy doing other things. And I thought that was kind of funny. I laughed to myself about it. I thought, okay, here I'm in bed. I'm hearing these sounds. Heard some thumping going by the tent, and I don't have no exterior light. But I thought, oh, well, it is what it is, as they say, so I'll just kind of hang tight and see what happens. And so, I'm not too flipped out about it. I mean, I figured, hey,
we've had
one other thing, too, is I've told you over the years, too, as well as other people, I'm not going to let anything chase me out of the woods that I love to do. Love to hunt, fish, camp, hike, whatever. So I know these creatures are real, but irregardless, I'm not going to be freaked out enough where I'm selling all my camping supplies and equipment. I'm selling my firearms. I have nothing to do with the woods no more. No, I'm not like that. I'm like this. No, I'm going to continue to enjoy what I want to do. The passion for the woods, so campfire, etc. I look at it this way. You leave me alone, I'll leave you alone. If you can't learn to coexist with me around the campfire, or if it gets to a point where it starts turning physical, where you're basically throwing rocks or you're being super aggressive, then yeah, I've got a big problem with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one of the things we've talked about many times, is that we don't want to go pick a fight, but basically if you leave us alone, I know they're curious beings, but if you just basically stay away from harassing us, and we won't harass you, then we're all going to get along.
Yeah.
And so for the most part, that's worked out, fine. We don't set up booby traps for them, so to speak, or anything that would harm them. But I just find I just found it very interesting and ironic and surreal that this happened. Of course, the day after, or the day or two after I left, but that, people don't have to go very far. You don't have to go, where we went to have encounters. It can be sometimes in your neighborhood and you don't even know what's happening. But the biggest thing is people have to get out away from their home or their office, and you have to be willing to stay in a tent. When you're in a trailer, it's hard to hear things. You can't hear, you've got generator, those walls of the trailer prevent sound from penetrating and you can hear. And so when you're out in a tent, though, there's a lot of people that's had tent poking going on, and you hear everything, all the sounds at night.
Exactly. I mean, for those that have actually had night encounters, which is just about all a person can stand, because number one, where our mind is moving at warp speed to say, oh my God, what is that? The only way you're going to know, unless if it just stands still and it presents itself and you put a light on it, and then you have your encounter that way. Now you can actually see what's doing the tent poking. Having a daytime encounter, like I said, is creepy. But the encounter that I had was at night. And the only way that I got to see it was, obviously it was in the behind the pickup, and a friend of mine that I was in the pickup with, we were going to do some night fishing, fired up the truck. And then when he fired up the truck, of course, the red lens tail lights reflected back off of it. And of course, boom, there you go. I see it, a no-brainer. That was pretty creepy. So, anything, and I've always kept it, anything's possible to happen in a camp. So I just thought that was kind of strange and kind of weird that something would run past the tent and then something ran past the tent again. So once again, whether it was the same something coming back again or something else preceded the first something that ran by, who knows? But like I said, the next morning, kind of look for some definition in the soil. But we both know that soil down there, kind of interesting. It wasn't really wet enough or soft enough, because it's kind of a rocky outcrop of. It's a mixture. It's an interesting mixture of ground there.
Yeah, but, it's a heavy clay base. It does have sand, but it's a heavy clay. So when it gets wet, where we were camped, it is like gumbo. It's like literally clay clods that you can mold a pottery bowl with. But when it dries out and gets hard, it's hard. You cannot find a print one just because it's already dried. And so it's hard enough you can drive up on, you can put a tent on, but for tracks and prints, it's worthless.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, so, but, it was a interesting experience. It's not like you have those every day. But I think the reason, once again, it just goes back to what we were talking about earlier. Not a lot of people can, there's probably been X number of years the last time somebody pitched a tent in that area.
I'm sure.
So you've got this type of wildlife activity that happens at night and at day, but they come at night around that pond because it is a watering hole.
And the only one in apparently a wide margin. It's the only close watering hole for when you get on Google Earth and take a look at it, there's not another one around for a ways.
Yeah, the only thing that you're going to find is sporadic pockets, and when I say sporadic, I'm just alluding to the fact that you've got various creek, basically water coming up from, because down in that part of the state, you've got water that leaches through the soil, but it's not like a flowing, running creek. It's just sporadic. But the large body of water that you have is that pond. So maybe they're used to, which would make sense, coming up to that to get a drink, coming up to the pond at night, whether it's a deer or a Bigfoot. And we know that at this particular time of year, during high-powered rifle season or during November, those creatures hunt the same game we hunt. So, you've got all this activity in the woods. So, maybe we disrupted its natural flow.
Yeah.
Of camping there, and it would make sense. And it's not like hey, it's the fact that we're having fun too. So it probably thought, you know what, you guys are in my area. Don't like that. Now,
yeah.
So that's the only thing I can kind of connect the dots with.
Yeah,
that would make sense.
Well, and that's kind of why I wanted to have you on for a show here. Is that it does make sense to us, and it may not to other people that's never had an experience. But when you know that the world is a lot bigger, a stranger place, and that these creatures do exist. And when you know that, then you know a little bit more what to hear for, look for. Things just don't add up in a location where you're supposed to be by yourself. And then you don't have to be an expert on footfalls and gait cycles and all that, but you just kind of know what it sounds like when someone on 2 feet run by versus 4 legs or a deer or whatever. I mean, most people could tell. And so that's why I just wanted to have you on. I really appreciate your time, bro. I know everybody gets busy, but we had a really good time out there, and I hope we can go back here soon. Maybe not for deer hunting, but we'll have many years of prime opportunity just to go out and investigate that property. We spent some time hunting, but it'd be interesting just to investigate the property and go down in that WMA. You and I were talking about this with Brother Bill, that that WMA that's on the south border, I mean, that is, I feel that there's no man really been back there a lot.
Yeah, and I agree, just because of the layout of the terrain is so woolly that, I got a chance to hunt that southwest corner of the property, and that was kind of creepy in the daytime. It's just because, a lot of people say, what do you mean creepy in the daytime? Well, it's just because of how the terrain is laid out. It's just really weird and woolly, meaning that lots of grass, lots of sporadic different types of trees.
Yeah, lots of tall grass.
Yeah, pathways, and of course game trails, deer trails, hog trails, going spidering in all directions. But it's just that southwest corner back there, and of course, which bleeds into that WMA area. Who knows what's back there? I do know for a fact that, no man just walks back there all the time. There's no way. That is, flip a coin and pick your poison. There are so many things that could be walking back there. And I kept thinking that, even though, because I primarily came down, to hunt with everybody, but, I like to hunt hogs. And I enjoy hunting hogs, and there's quite a few. There's more than enough hogs on that property. But while I was hunting hogs, of course, and of course, I wasn't going to pass up a huge, monster buck, so to speak. But at the same time, I just kept looking around, thinking, wow, anything could literally pop out.
Oh, absolutely.
Anything could pop out, and I thought,
same feeling.
Oh yeah, it was just, and that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking, here I'm sitting on my little foam butt pad, and I'm looking around, and I'm like, anything could just literally pop out walk to the left or right or be staring at you to begin with, because it saw you sit down to get ready to harvest some game. So, I mean, the possibilities are endless. And when I like to look at definition within a tree line. I like to look for what's out of the ordinary. Look at the shadows.
Right.
Look at dark shadows. Why is there a big black dark shadow over there and it's not moving? It's just sitting there. Mm-hmm. Well, there's probably a reason why. It's because whatever that is probably looking at you and trying to figure you out, or wonder who's going to make the first move. So anyway, yeah, go ahead, man.
No, I think that's a very good point. I was telling, Sue that, she was asking, what do you do when you're sitting there and you can't see anything yet? It's too early to shoot, but you're in place. I said, well, you start memorizing the layout, the silhouettes. When light starts coming, you start memorizing the dark patterns in the trees. You see dark patterns and you start kind of focusing on the dark. Your eyes go to the light, but you need to focus on the dark. And that's where they'll be. But I won't take too much of your time, brother. I appreciate you being on. I know you got to go to work tomorrow, and so do I, but I just wanted to get this down for the folks and just let them know that, it happens everywhere. It happens to us. And you just kind of want to recap things, what happened. If something doesn't make sense, then it doesn't make sense. But, it's always good to go with a group of people. Always take a firearm, some means of protecting yourself. And don't go picking a fight. But, if you've got a firearm, it's easier to have one when you need it rather than not have one. And you need one terribly. But I want to thank you for coming on, brother. I'll talk to you again this week, and so I'll let you get some rest and for work tomorrow.
All right. Well, I enjoyed being on to share my experiences, and it's good. It's good food for thought for everybody out there listening. I know lots of folks love to go camping, fishing, hiking, hunting, and all that stuff too, or just going out there, releasing all the tensions from work and etc. So, but at the same time, you go out there to enjoy yourself, but you've got to keep in the back of your mind that, always take a firearm, always be prepared, always expect the unexpected. It's not necessarily being paranoid, but knowing that there's other things out there too that does go bump in the night. And so, once again, but even though I know that's so true, I still do not let it, scare me out of the woods forever. I have got to enjoy myself. I'm like, okay, I know you're out there. You see me, whatever the case may be. I'm going to continue to hunt, fish, camp, whatever. Just kind of learn to coexist for a little bit, and then I'll get out of the area. So, I enjoyed talking to you this evening, and so stay safe, and I'll be talking to you here shortly.
Okay, bro. Take care, and have a good night, and I appreciate it.
Okay, you too. Stay safe.
Okay. Good night.
You bet. Bye-bye.